anyway, Dr. Tina Woodward is the president and CEO of Capstone Solutions, Inc.com, if you want to look that up. And then it was founded in 2000 as Pinnacle Performance Solutions, and then later it became Capstone Performance Solutions. And Capstone Performance Solution gets into some high-impact human resource solutions that address organizational challenges and transforms culture. So with that, I'm just going ahead and let Dr. Woodward take over, and we will be here an hour.
Okay.
So we'll keep you posted.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
How are you all feeling today?
Great.
I am so excited that you're here for this session because Tybee Beach is just down the road and you could have been there. So thank you for choosing to be here. I'm a beach lover, so my beach radar is going off. Like, why are you here instead of at the beach? But I'm here because this topic is so vitally important for us in HR and safety. So it's an honor for me to be here with you all today. And you know, I was really prepared to give this $100 bill to any conference attendee who sat on the front row, but since no one did, I'm just gonna put it back in my
Excuse
purse.
me?
Well, you know, it has a 1, but it's missing a couple of zeros.
Go to kids' camp.
Again, it is a pleasure for me to be here, and I'm gonna just jump right in. This is Us. How many of you like that show? Come on, it's a fantastic show. I love that show because it really emphasizes the importance of family, and my family is really important to me. And so there you see, right in the center, my handsome hubby and me, and he's actually here today. He's sitting right on the front row. He's one of the best senior HR leaders in the world. So if you need some HR advice, talk to him. And then we're flanked by our 2 beautiful daughters, one who just started Georgia Southern 3 weeks ago. I'm still weeping, my first child to go off to college. And you see my parents there standing beside me, and on the far end, my older sister and her husband and son on this end, and my nephew who goes to Clemson University now. Any Tiger fans in the room? Go Tigers? No, not too much. I'll tell you, I graduated from Clemson University twice, and I have been living in Georgia for 20 years. I'm a Carolina girl, so I'm from the Palmetto State, and I have been having a difficult time finding Clemson Tiger fans in Georgia. Yeah. What's wrong here? But it's all good, it's all good. I wisened up really quickly and realized that if I'm gonna live in Georgia, then I must do as the Georgians do. So I went to UGA and got a doctorate. There you go. So, you know, this is my family, and the reason I'm pointing this out is, again, not just because my family is so important to me, because how I was raised is an important part of why I'm standing before you today. My parents are retired school teachers. So as you can imagine, education was very important in our household. And there was no discussion of if you were going to go to college, it was which college you're going to attend. And if you brought anything home less than a B, then we had some serious conversations. And so my family, my parents, we're brand loyalists. And, you know, if it's going to be toothpaste, it's got to be Crest. Any Crest lovers in here? If it's going to be dish liquid, it's got to be Dawn. And we are a Toyota family. You know, I don't want to give away my age, but I have been riding in or driving Toyotas for a very long time, since middle school. And we're the type, because my family, my teachers, my parents are retired teachers, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, because teachers don't get paid a lot, and they still don't get paid enough for what they have to do. And so we didn't always have the latest version of the cars. We kept our cars for a very long time. And that taught me a lesson and kind of followed me into adulthood. So now as an adult, I drive mostly Camrys. We have a Toyota Camry household. In fact, the Camry that we have now just reached 360,000 miles. And it's still going, just strong and perfectly well. And so that Camry, I don't know, it's a year 2000 or something. But last week, because I have clients all over the Southeast, and last week I had an opportunity to go to Enterprise, and guess what they gave me? A 2018 Toyota Camry. So I was right at home, to say the least. And I was so impressed when I got in and things started lighting up, because again, you know, my Camry is from the 1930s. And so I was just so impressed with everything lighting up and just some of the improvements and the innovations and features that they have put into the 2018 Toyota Camry. One in particular that just really mesmerized me that I'm going to share with you. I'm driving down the highway, and I don't know about you, but when I'm driving and if no one is directly behind me, I'll just switch lanes without putting on my turn signal. Anybody else guilty of doing that occasionally? Well, Toyota has done some research apparently, and they have concluded that if you're driving down the highway and you're trying to change lanes and you don't put on your turn signal, then apparently you're a distracted driver who needs a little help with the steering wheel. And you're either falling asleep or you're manipulating your smartphone. But that's illegal in Georgia, so don't anyone do that anymore, visibly. And so the feature on this car will automatically redirect the steering wheel to keep you in your lane. I was fascinated. When did they start doing this? So I'm sitting here just fighting with the steering wheel, like, no, I want to change lanes, and the steering wheel is like, no, stay in this lane, and I'm like, no, I want to change lanes, and I called my husband, I said, what is this? He said, oh, it's some new feature that Toyota has, and so you can disable it, but who wants to disable a safety feature? That's not a good thing. At a safety conference, you don't want to say that you disable the safety features, right? So I kept it on, but it changed my behavior for the rest of that drive, and so that's what I want to talk to you about today. Toyota has implemented some innovations that have really kept the user, the end user in mind, and keeping us safer on the highways. And so thanks to my parents, and they're educating me about the value of keeping cars for a very long time, it really has me interested in innovation. And so what I want to talk to you about today is how do we take those same practices, those same principles and processes that companies like Toyota and Google and Amazon and Samsung, they use a particular process to continuously improve and add innovations to their products and their services. How might HR and safety use those same principles, those same practices, so that we can attract and retain high quality talent? Because truly, we are in a very competitive environment now. There are 6.7 million jobs available in this country as of today. And companies, HR, we know, we're having a really difficult time recruiting and finding those individuals who have just the right mindset and the skills to really add value to our organization. And so the law of supply and demand is really not on our side right now. And so many organizations, so many businesses are struggling with how to attract the right talent. And then once you attract them, how do you keep them? Because we're all going after that same talent pool. And it's making it even more challenging for us as HR leaders and safety leaders to make sure we have the right organization, the right workforce in place at the right time to reach our strategic objectives. Anybody understand this problem that we're facing? And so that's why today our topic is really so important, and I want to stimulate your thinking around how might we create more innovative processes, how might we use the design thinking process. And I'm going to tell you more about that and more about how I even reached this point in my career, because I started my career as an industrial engineer. I mentioned that I went to the best university, I was just sharing with Ed, the best university in the state of South Carolina, which is Clemson University. Go Tigers. But I started my career working for a global Fortune 50 manufacturing organization. And when I'm in public forums, I don't usually share the name of the company, but I trust you all, so I'll at least give you the initials, GE. How many of you are familiar with that company and the products and the innovation and creativity that go into these products? And so I started my career with GE and going through their engineering development training program and learning so much about the various aspects of the business. And then when I started learning more about HR, I became interested in that because I noticed as an industrial engineer working on the shop floor and working with the operators on the shop floor and noticing that some of the problems weren't related to the processes and the procedures. The problems were between the individuals, the people who are responsible for putting these products together. And so I became more interested in HR. And so all of this is going to make sense as we go throughout this session today, because we cannot ignore that people side of what we do, and that's why we're here, and that's why our jobs are so important as HR professionals. And so what we're going to talk about today is how can we use this design thinking process and use these same principles and processes that major companies use that really have to innovate or die. Think about your smartphone and how competitive it is around the features on your smartphone. If iPhone doesn't come up, or Apple, if they don't come up with a new product to introduce every fall, we're going to think something is wrong. They have to introduce a new product every fall, and so I'm looking forward to what are they going to introduce this fall. And people are standing in line waiting to get those enhanced features, although there's nothing wrong with our current smartphones, right? But we always feel like we have to have the latest and greatest. So we're going to talk about the 5-stage design thinking process. How many of you are familiar with design thinking? Yes, no one raised their hands. I'm excited about that because this is really groundbreaking. I've seen it. I've seen it work. It emanated out of Stanford University, their School of Design, and it really started with a lot of the tech startup companies. They were using this process. And so just like any other good thing, when you see a good thing and you look at it and say, how can I use that good thing? And that's what started happening in some of these other industries. And now government agencies are using this process. And the reason I mentioned that I started my career at GE is because GE had a lot of this was a long time ago. I know they're selling things off now. But a long time ago, we had 13 businesses at GE, and we were number 1 or number 2 under Jack Welch. His leadership philosophy was, we're going to be number 1 or number 2 in that market, or we're going to sell it. So you had to innovate or die. Innovate or realize you were going to be sold off. And so they also have the first corporate university in the country. And as engineers, we were mandated to go spend the first 2 weeks of our employment at this corporate university. And part of the day, one of the days we were there, we'd sit Indian style. Jack Welch would fly in on the helicopter, and we'd watch him get off the helicopter and come over, and he'd talk to us about leadership and Workforce 2000. Do you all remember when that was a thing? Now I'm dating myself, right? Workforce 2000 was a thing, and he talked to us about the changing landscape of the workforce and how we were going to all have to work together and the type of leaders we needed to lead GE forward in the future. And we had a plethora of resources. And then after 7 or 8 years working as an engineer, I said, you know what? I want to do something more service-oriented. I'm going to work for county government. I started working for county government, and the first day there, they asked me, how many reams of paper are you going to need this year? I don't know. And then I said, well, where do I find the ink pens? And she said, oh, they're in the closet, the supply closet. And I went to the supply closet, and it was locked. And she said, oh, you have to go to the front desk and sign a form. And I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? There were some processes in place that did not enhance the employee experience. And at that point, I really became passionate about helping government agencies and other organizational systems that were ineffective and bureaucratic. I wanted to help them become more effective and become more efficient in their processes so the employees would have a better experience. I'm going to share this design thinking process with you today, And we're gonna talk about how to use some of the tools that you might apply to safety and to HR, because this is a creative thinking process and methodology that can be used in any industry, in any size organization. So yes, there's a way we can use this methodology to innovate and think more creatively about human resources. There's a way that we can use this process and these tools to think more innovatively about safety and keeping our workers healthy and well and whole. And then before you leave today, I want you to have an opportunity to do some of this work, because I don't believe in seminar-oritis. Is that what Deetra said in our lunch break? You know, that pains me when I see people so excited and they're learning and they're enthusiastic about taking things back to their work, but then the status quo demon creeps in and keeps us doing the same thing that we've always done. And they say that if you keep doing the same thing you've always done, you're gonna continue getting the same results that you've always got. And we're at such a critical juncture right now in terms of the labor market. We cannot afford, as HR professionals and as safety professionals, we can't afford to keep doing things the same old way, because it's not working. And this next generation in the workforce, they're not tolerating it. And they're choosing to go start their own businesses as opposed to working in these businesses and companies that really need them and need their ingenuity and need their energy. So this is vitally important. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. So Buckminster Fuller said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. Build a new system that makes the existing system obsolete." We have to be really creative and really innovative to build a new system that makes the existing system obsolete, but it happens every day. And we are the benefactors of such thinking and such innovation. Do you recognize any of these innovations? What did Netflix do to make the old system obsolete? Streaming, and someone else said something? Convenience, absolutely. And I'm sorry, did you repeat that?
No commercials.
No commercials. But how many of you remember Blockbuster and having to go walk down aisles and aisles and looking at the video cases that were empty because they did not trust us? Look at those cases and pick out your movies and go stand in line, pay for the rental, then they go get the actual tape and put it inside, and you take it home, and you only had 3 days to watch all of those movies unless you're gonna be willing to incur extra fees if you turned it in late, and then you had to drive back to Blockbuster and put it in there, and it was just such a hassle. And Netflix said, we don't want our customers to have to do that. We're gonna make this process easier for them. We're gonna make it more efficient. In fact, we're gonna just mail it to you. Tell us what you want, and we will mail it to you. That's how Netflix actually started. And then what did they do? They continuously improved their business model to the point where they said, now we can do streaming. Now you can, from the comfort of your home, lying on your sofa, select from thousands of series, TV series and shows and documentaries and anything you want to see. In fact, for my teenage daughters, I have to keep constantly changing the password because I don't want them looking at too much TV. So Netflix has totally disrupted an industry. What about this next innovation in the middle here? What system did they make obsolete? Cell phones? The home phone? Cameras? Computers? Absolutely. They actually combined several technologies to make a lot of systems obsolete. And now we can't imagine leaving home without it, correct? And then, what about this last picture that I have up here? Has anybody seen this? Because this really blew me away. I told you I grew up in South Carolina. My grandfather owned several large tobacco farms and also soybeans. And during the summers, I would go stay with him, my sister and I. We would go stay with him, and we were a part of the tobacco harvesting team. And as a 12-year-old, I was so proud of my job on the harvester team because really the only thing I could do was drive the tractor. He trusted me to drive the tractor. Now, it was only going like less than 5 miles an hour, so I wasn't gonna kill anyone. However, now we have the self-driving tractor. What is that? They've taken my job away. You know, what system have they now made obsolete? You don't need the farmer driving the tractor. Now the farmer can do more administrative, strategic things that the farmer needs to do. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, if the tractor knows this is the best time for me to go plow the field, it knows exactly which equipment to go grab, and it can do it at 2 o'clock in the morning. It can work all hours of the day. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't need to be fed. It doesn't get an attitude. It doesn't fall asleep like I used to do on the tractor because it was going so slow. I'd fall asleep and start running over the tobacco stalks, and they say, whoa, hold up, wake up. So what system has been made obsolete? So again, these companies like Apple and Google and Samsung, they use design thinking constantly as a way to reinvent themselves, change their business model, offer us better products and better services. But can this be done in HR? Can we do it? Yes, we can. Because there are some companies that are already doing some pretty innovative things where HR is concerned. For example, Cisco. Cisco, a year and a half ago, they implemented something called a hackathon. Now those in the tech industry know that, you know, they do that all the time. But this is a non-tech hackathon. They sent their HR people out to go talk to the employees. Imagine that. They went out and talked to the employees to find out what are some of the issues you're having with HR? What are some of those pain points you're experiencing? And so they ran this hackathon for about 2 or 3 weeks, and they walked away with 105 new solutions to enhance the employee experience. And they implemented something to delight their employees called Moments That Matter. Because what they learned during the hackathon was that employees wanted more support as it relates to these pivotal moments in their careers, like the recruiting process, the onboarding process, and the orientation, and all of the things that they were doing as it related to changing jobs within the company. And also, when they had family emergencies, they wanted support from HR. And they told HR what kind of support they really needed. And so Cisco started implementing this, and it greatly enhanced the employee experience. Pixar and Airbnb, they have shifted their management philosophy for HR from one that's technical and administrative to being from a chief HR officer. Now they're called chief employee experience officers. And they're doing less of the technical and administrative, and they're doing more outreach to the employees, counseling, connecting with the employees to give that personal touch to the employee experience. You know, we know about the employee value proposition, and it's a great thing to put on your job postings, and it's really great to have that, but now it's more of a need for an individual value proposition to help employees understand what their expectations are, and then what the company is going to do, what HR is going to do, and what the company is going to do to help them and support them in delivering that. And lastly, Netflix. Patty McCord was the HR director. How many of you are familiar with her work? Patty McCord. She was the VP of HR for Netflix, I think from 98 to 2012. So she was there almost, 15 years. She has a totally different view of HR. She believes in keeping it real and keeping it honest with employees. They implemented something related to, you know, we're gonna hire mature adults. And when we hire mature adults, we realize that they can be responsible for their own decision making. So they eliminated vacation approvals. If you need vacation, take vacation. Manage it. Do what's in the best interest of Netflix. Something else that they did, they eliminated Expense reports. How many of us just love doing expense reports? We don't. They eliminated expense reports because they said, we trust our people. We only hire mature adults. And we believe that you're going to act in the best interest of Netflix. So when you go out on a business trip, if you're not entertaining a potential customer or client, then use your best judgment to look out for the best interest of Netflix. That's a non-traditional approach to an HR process that a lot of people really hate. And so lastly, something else really fascinating and creative that they did, they eliminated performance improvement plans. How many of us just love doing performance improvement plans? No hands in the room went up, and I understand. Because what's the point? And that was Patty McCord's philosophy. She said, 9 times out of 10, that employee is not going to improve, and 6 months down the road, we're still going to end up separating that individual. So let's just cut our losses now, offer that person a generous severance package, and go our separate ways. And that's what they started doing, to save resources and time, and really keep the morale of the employees up. Because we know when other employees are not contributing their equal share, and they're getting away with it, it lowers morale for everyone. So instead of keeping that low performer around, they decided, you know what, let's just move on, let's cut our ties. So yes, we are doing now some innovative things in HR, and I want to hear from you. What are you doing that you would classify as pretty creative and innovative in HR right now, and in safety right now? What are you doing? Yes?
We started the culture committee with our corporate group, about 150 employees in our corporate location. So we have team members designated, nominated by their supervisors for each department, and we all meet and decide what events and things we want to do.
Great. That's pretty creative. You know, I always share with leaders, I do a lot of coaching, and I share with leaders that if you want to really impact and influence and motivate your workforce, look at 3 things. Look at your culture, look at compensation, and your carrots, or the incentives. If you get those 3 things right, then you're on your way to having a high-performing workplace. So culture, compensation, and carrots. And I think the tech industry does a really good job of putting those incentives there and creating these nice little perks for their employees. Anybody else doing anything really innovative or creative, or have you heard of some organization or company doing something innovative and creative in the HR safety space? Yes.
My husband works for Honeywell, and they've eliminated earned vacation. You take as much vacation as you need, similar to what you talked about.
Yes.
So he's not happy because he has earned 5 weeks, so why should anybody get, from an employee that's been there a long time, that doesn't quite feel right. I think it's an innovative process.
Okay. But I'm sure the new hires love it. So when Netflix released it was a slide deck of some of the things that they've done in HR, and just to change the culture of Netflix, it went viral. People started downloading it and using it, and now Patty McCord is traveling around the country. She has a new book out right now about some of the innovations that they implemented in HR. And so if you haven't read that, it's a really great read. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to think about the future. Where are we now, and where are we headed in HR and safety in the future? What are some of the future challenges that we're going to be facing as an industry in HR and in safety? What are some of those challenges? So I want you to think about it from the aspect of political and economic and environmental. What are some of the social, technological things that are going to really impact HR and safety in the future? And I want you to come up with your top 2. And I want you to share those top 2 with your partner. Just turn to someone at your table. Or if you want to just do a triad, that's fine as well. But I want you to come up, what are the top 2 challenges that HR is facing, that safety is facing, that we are really going to have to be creative about going forward? So take a couple of minutes to do that. Top 2 challenges. Go. to share? Really? Okay. This is mine. Huh? Okay, I hope you had a chance to really talk about some of these future issues that HR and safety will be facing. We're going to move forward. For the sake of time, I just want to hear from a few of you. We're going to start in the back of the room, something that we're just going to flip things around today because we're being creative and innovative here. So all the way in the far left-hand corner, my left hand, right here in the corner. What did you all come up with?
We talked about the generational differences.
Mm.
Skilled older laborers and young professionals coming in and gap in skills between them.
Yes.
And how to mesh the two together to see the benefits that they can share between one another. And we talked about pay in marketplaces and also the challenges in recruiting and getting the right kind of skill that we need.
Yes, yes. Challenges in recruiting and the culture that's being shaped by these various generations in the workplace. And then your second one was?
Some of the pay.
Oh, pay,
In some
yes.
marketplaces, people will jump rather quickly right now, just even for 25 or 50 cents more an hour.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And like I said, the law of supply and demand really aren't on the employer side right now. And that's creating even more competition. And sometimes employees will just go out and get an offer just to come back and have you give them a counter offer, right? Mm-hmm. They know they can do that and get away with it because, the labor market is so tight right now. Okay, let's jump into the middle of the room. Let's go on this side. My great friend who I sat with at lunch, Kelsey. That's what you get for saying that speaker at lunch.
We didn't get all the way through because we were still talking.
Okay. Just one is fine.
Both of us have the same problem, finding, there's an insufficient talent pool. That's a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's-
Insufficient talent pool, absolutely.
We need to get the second one.
Okay, no problem, because that's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing. And we'll jump somewhere to the front of the room, right here. What did you all talk about?
We talked about compensation, and we talked about moving from the administrative paperwork, busy, to more strategic, fun HR.
Mm-hmm. Fun HR. HR is fun, isn't it? Absolutely. Yeah, so thank you for sharing. And there's a great HBR article that I'll suggest to you all. It's called People Before Strategy. It's a really great concept about G3 is what the author calls it. The CEO working with the CFO and on the same level bringing in the CHRO. to have weekly conversations about the strategy and about the workforce that's needed to implement that strategy. It talks about how for so long the HR officer has been left out of those conversations about strategy. They go away, they come up with the strategy, and then they bring it to HR and say, okay, go hire these people. But you don't know if you're going to be able to achieve that strategy if you don't have the right workforce in place. So that's going to affect your strategy. So we need to be a part of that conversation to talk about what are the workforce capabilities that are already in place today with our existing workforce, and then what changes, how can we develop the talent within, because we know we can't always go to the marketplace to get those skills. We'll have to focus intensely on developing the talent within. How can we do that? So those should be ongoing conversations. And this particular article talks about how the CEO needs to break down barriers for the CHRO to bring that person to the table. Similarly to how the CEO did that for the CFO decades ago. It will require the three individuals working together. And so I highly recommend you take a look at that particular article. And so all of the problems that you all, challenges that you all just shared, can be summarized and categorized in one or more of these categories, because these are the typical categories of challenges that we experience in HR. People. I heard someone say recruiting and the lack of a high quality talent pool. How do we attract the right people who have the right skill set? And then once we attract them and onboard them, how do we keep them happy? And how do we keep them connected and aligned with the purpose of the organization and helping them find meaning and purpose in their work and making sure that's aligned with the mission and the purpose of the organization? Because if there's misalignment there, they're not going to be happy. And if they're not happy, they're going to be disengaged. And the latest Gallup poll says, over 80% of US workers are disengaged and actively disengaged. The part that worries me the most are the actively disengaged. Because those are the individuals who are so negative that they're influencing others to be negative as well and causing them to be even more disengaged. Then systems and processes. HR, let's be honest, we know we have some outdated systems and processes in place that our employees abhor. I teach HR at a state college, and I teach mostly adults, working adults, so I teach at night, HR management, and we have these conversations. What are some of the best experiences you've had with HR? And what are some of the painful experiences that you've had with HR? And one of the main things they talk about is lack of information and communication, and then the inefficient processes, feeling like it takes so long to get through some of those processes. We have got to continuously improve our HR processes and systems, utilizing technology. Because when I asked them about some of the best experiences, some of them talked about self-service and being able to access that information when they need it. Yet, this is a generation that still wants the human touch. So yes, they want quick and fast and efficient processes, but when they have a question, they want to be able to have a personal contact person in HR to whom they can call and direct their questions and get immediate answers. But if we're bogged down in the administrative, tactical work, we're not trying to answer a call and have a personal conversation with anyone, are we? So that's why we need to really take a look at how we can help alleviate some of the pain points in the organization. And we can do that through being innovative. What does it mean to be innovative? What is innovation?
Thinking outside the box.
Yeah, thinking of a new way to do something, thinking outside of the box, and flip that box over and just throw it away. Throw away all of those restrictions and those parameters and think, what can we do to really create a high quality employee experience that will have our employees applying discretionary effort. We want them to be so excited when they wake up in the morning, they don't care about the 45-minute commute to Atlanta through traffic and the hot lane, because they're so excited and passionate about their work. Innovation. This is a strategic leadership imperative. All of the companies are saying, we need the skill set in our workforce now. We need individuals who can think creatively, who are critical thinkers and problem solvers, people who can solve complex problems. The World Economic Forum did a study, and it showed, it included 310, I believe, CHROs, global CHROs, global companies. So it represents 13 million employees. And they asked, what do you need in your workforce? And this is what came up: innovation, creativity. IBM did a study of CEOs, and now one of the most critical competencies that they need in the workplace is collaboration. So we need people who can think creatively, who can think innovatively, helping us bring ideas to solution, relevant ideas. And the design thinking process is one that will help us do that, but we have to have the right culture. So it's great that you have a culture committee, because we're gonna need that. And as leaders, as HR leaders, as safety leaders, how do we respond when our employees come to us and say, I have a great idea. What if we were to fill in the blank? And already we're thinking, we don't have the budget for that, we don't have time, it's never gonna work, the VP is never gonna approve that. We're already thinking of why we can't. But as leaders, if change is going to happen, it starts with us. We've got to start encouraging and supporting innovation and creativity. Even if there's one little aspect of that idea that can be implemented or piloted, let's latch onto that and show that employee your voice counts. And I want even more of your creativity, even more of your ideas, because what you see here, the manager is talking to the employee, this really is an innovative approach, but I'm afraid we can't consider it. It's never been done before. How many of us have heard that phrase? Well, that's just not the way we do it around here. We've never done it that way. Perfect. Let's give it a try. Because in order to really do design thinking and do it well, you have to embrace experimentation. Failure has to be accepted. In fact, let's just pick on Amazon, since they're now a $1 trillion company. Jeff Bezos has been known to say that if his employees can get a 100 times return, 1 in 10 times, he wants them to take that bet every single time. Are you kidding me? That means 9 times out of 10, your employee might fail with that new idea. But you've got to be willing to accept that, willing to support that. Because it may be that 9th time when they get it right. In fact, WD-40, how many of you are familiar with that product? You know why it's called WD-40? Because the first 39 experiments failed. The 40th one worked. What if the manager had said, Tina, you've been in that lab for 3 months now, 39 experiments have failed. You're wasting the company's resources. Throw away that project idea and get back to work. Then we wouldn't have WD-40 today. How many times did it take to create the light bulb? 1,000 times. You know, what if time number 999, I was like, oh, I'm tired. This isn't gonna work. We have got to keep pushing forward our ideas about how to make our workplaces safer, about how to encourage safety behaviors among our workforce. We've got to keep pushing the envelope about how to increase productivity by engaging our employees and providing those incentives to them that really work. It starts with us as leaders. And so now, what is design thinking? It is a way to accelerate innovation, to create better solutions to the challenges that we face in business and society. Right now, DFACS, for the state of Georgia, has a Chief Innovation Officer. They use design thinking to come up with ways to improve our communities. We're using this in higher education because, of course, higher education is a huge behemoth and a business model that certainly needs to change. People are questioning the value of a college degree. We have to change. Public education and higher education. I spent the last 8 years of my career working as an assistant vice chancellor for the Board of Regents, the university system in this state. When I started, we had 35 colleges and universities. Now we have, 26? Because we're consolidating. We're trying to become more effective and more efficient. And what we realize is that if we're going to inspire creativity to think about ways that we can change our operations and reduce costs for our students, then it starts at the top. So my mandate was to develop and facilitate and provide coaching for our executive level leaders. So for 8 years, I designed executive leadership programs that included design thinking. And it was a different way of thinking for a lot of our presidents and vice presidents, but it started taking hold to the point where now other colleges and universities outside of the state of Georgia are calling saying, we want to learn this process and implement this process as well. So design thinking is a human-centered approach. What does that mean? It means that we start with the user, the end user first. What are the pain points this person is experiencing? How can we design a solution that will help them and alleviate that pain point? We start with desirability. It has to be desirable, and the only way we'll know if it's desirable is if we talk to them and find out, what do you need? If we observe, how are people using this performance appraisal instrument? What do they love about our performance appraisal system? Right, nothing. Managers hate it, supervisors hate it, the employees hate it. We all hate it. But it's a traditional approach that we in HR continuously hold on to. Why? We need to rethink how we're offering, what's the whole point? The whole point is feedback. Let's think differently about how we give feedback to our employees. It doesn't have to include an annual 5-point rating scale that everyone hates to do for various reasons. So we start with desirability to make sure that it is a relevant solution that's going to alleviate some pain points for our employees and help them unleash their potential so that they will move from that disengaged column to engaged. So they will stop updating their resume and thinking about how they can contribute more value to their current employer. That's what we really want. Then feasibility. Is this even possible? But we start with desirability. And then we think about, is it possible? And then viability. How can we sustain this? We don't want it to be a flavor of the month initiative. How can we sustain it? And the intersection, which is that dark circle that you see, that dark section in the middle, that's where innovation happens. When you find a solution that's desirable, and it's feasible, and it's viable, innovation is occurring. And that's what design thinking is all about. This is the 5-step design thinking process. If you give me your business card, I'll email my slide deck to you. I'm happy to share. But this is the 5-step process. It starts with empathy. And then you move into, and empathy is, and we're going to talk about each of these 5 stages. Then you define the challenge or the problem. Then you ideate, which is just a fancy word for saying we're going to do some brainstorming. And then you prototype and test. Because design thinking is about coming up with solutions that aren't readily obvious. If it's obvious, then it's really not an experiment. You want a solution that really meets the needs of the end user, and that's what sets design thinking apart from other problem-solving methodologies. And I know a lot about problem-solving methodologies. I was a supplier quality engineer in the automotive industry, and as a part of that, I learned the 8D problem-solving process designed by Ford manufacturing companies. I was actually one of their lead trainers for this very rigid, regimented, 8-step problem-solving process, 8 disciplines. This is why they call it 8Ds. And you started with the problem. And then you went right into, well, what's the solution? Once we think we know the problem, we're not looking at the end user, but design thinking starts with the end user. What do your employees really think about the performance management system? What do they really think about your safety council or your culture committee? What do they really think? What are they really gaining from that? What do they really think about your learning and development policies and programs? What do they really think about benefits? Do you have a health and safety initiative that's really meeting their needs? 78 million Americans are living from paycheck to paycheck, and that stress is being translated into the workplace, which is causing a lot of increases in injuries. So if we can alleviate that, we're saying, oh, how can we make the workplace safer? Well, let's start with the end user. Why is it not safe? Why are they making these unsafe decisions? They're stressed out because they're saddled with debt. If we teach them some financial management tips and processes, maybe that will alleviate some of the stress so they're happier at work and they can actually focus on their jobs. That's what design thinking can do for us. So let's jump in. It starts with empathizing. Empathy is all about walk a mile in my shoes. Is that familiar to everyone? What does it mean to you to empathize with someone? What is empathy? I've been there. I'm right here with you. Tell me more. How are you feeling? What's going on? And I believe someone over here said something.
Try to understand what they're feeling.
Yes.
Feel what they're feeling.
Try to understand what they're feeling. 3 years ago, when my mother, who was 69 at the time, was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, the surgical oncologist walked into the room and very credentialed, very qualified to do his job, but he said, oh, Mrs. Collins, you have stage 3 breast cancer. My recommendation is that you have a double mastectomy. We can schedule it next week, and everything will be scheduled through my surgical assistant. You have any questions? And my sister and I, and my father were sitting there like, okay, well, my surgical assistant will be in a minute. And he walked out of the room. No empathy. I looked at my sister and I said, I'm gonna take her someplace else. She was up in South Carolina. I hurriedly called Emory Winship Cancer Institute. They scheduled an appointment with my mother that Monday. This was a Thursday. That Monday morning, I took her to Emory. Dr. Stiblow walked into the room and she grabbed my mother's hand and she looked at her and said, Mrs. Collins, how are you doing? And because I'm the chief medical officer and health organizer and coordinator for my parents, I looked up and said, well, we were in South Carolina and the doctor said this and that. And with one motion, she told me to stand down. She said, I want to hear from Mrs. Collins. And I thought, oh, this is a different approach. So I just sat there. She held my mother's hand the entire time, looked her in her eyes, and asked her, she waited patiently for her to tell her how she was feeling and what she was going through. And then she said, Mrs. Collins, you are going to be okay. We're going to work you through this. We're going to get you through this. You're going to be okay. I said, well, hallelujah. She cares. And while the qualifications and the experience in surgical oncology were equivalent, I walked out of that appointment feeling much more confident that my mother was in good hands. Why? Because Dr. Stiblow cared about the human that she was treating. As HR leaders, as safety leaders, we have to care. We have to be patient and allow the employees to ask them first, how are you doing? And really care. It's not a check the box. Yeah, I walked around and did my rounds today. No, really care, really connect, really want to know what pain points they're feeling every day trying to do their jobs so that we can make it better, so they can be engaged. And I'm happy to say that Dr. Stiblow was right. My mother was gonna be okay. Today she's 71 and she's a breast cancer survivor. Yes. And I will forever, if anything ever comes up, and I've told my husband, if I ever get into any kind of health emergency, take me to Emory. They seem to get it right. Not only are they knowledgeable and educated and credentialed, that's all important, but they really care. So as HR leaders, as safety leaders, we've got to show that we really care. Analyze the problem from the perspective of the user, of the person that we're trying to attract and retain in our workforce. So that's empathy. Then we have to define the challenge. What's really going on here? So we can learn more by doing interviews, by doing focus groups, bringing employees together and just talking and making some observations. And then frame that challenge appropriately. So we talked about performance management and how people just hate it. Can we really tackle the entire performance management system all at one time? That seems a little overwhelming. So maybe we frame it in a way that is more manageable. We break it down and say, well, if the point is to really give feedback, then how might we, those three important words that launch the innovation process, how might we create an atmosphere or a culture where feedback is instantaneous and the leaders of the teams enjoy giving that constant feedback. ADP, global company, they are implementing a significant change to their performance management system. They do check-ins now instead of the annual performance review. They do weekly check-ins, and they've coached all of their managers and directors on how to do these weekly check-ins and provide feedback. Using this word or question, how might we, is generative. Instead of saying we can't, when we turn that around and say how might we, then we can really come up with some solutions. Then the next step is to ideate, meaning to brainstorm. We're gonna brainstorm, but it's gonna be a different type of brainstorming. When I do this design thinking simulation for government agencies and higher education and some of my other clients, what you'll see is very similar to this. Post-it notes everywhere. We put one idea per post-it note. Why? Because then we have the freedom to move those ideas around, categorize, sort, combine certain ideas. So it looks very much like this. As we're brainstorming, we're going to take a fast approach. Because when you're being creative, you don't want to judge the idea and you don't want a lengthy explanation of it. You want to defer judgment and encourage those wild ideas. Why? Because that wild idea might have some element attached to it that is really not so unheard of that we can really implement. And build on the ideas of others. Yes, Jane, I love what you said, and we can also do this. So build on each other's ideas, stay focused on the topic, using that how might we statement. How might we create a culture of instantaneous feedback? Maybe put your how might we statement up on the board so you can stay focused and be visual using your post-it notes. Have one conversation at a time. Everybody's focused. Everybody's going to come up with ideas on how might we create a culture of feedback. And then go for quantity. Give yourself a time limit. Say for the next 5 minutes, we're gonna just brainstorm ideas for creating a culture of feedback or a management culture of coaching. But brainstorm, because you're gonna come up with a lot of ideas. Throw away the box, turn it upside down. Don't think about, at this point, what's viable and what's feasible. Right now, we just want your ideas as it relates to your how might we challenge to alleviate the pain points. And then you prototype and test. And I put the storyboard up here because it's one of the easier ways to develop a prototype. Design thinking is really all about showing instead of telling. So to the greatest extent, show the end user what they're gonna experience, what change you're trying to implement, or show them your solution. And then let them test it out. And your test should be quick and affordable. And when I run these simulations, I tell them the test needs to be less than an hour and it needs to be less than $100. And we actually have it funded through the organization, and you have these groups going out and doing these experiments and these tests around their organization to see what you're going to learn. And this is the iterative nature of the design thinking process, because you want to test your solution with your actual end user to see how are they going to use your new process or your new program. How are they experiencing it? Are they using it correctly? Are they enjoying the experience? You're going to learn so much that will take you back to your original design and show you ways that you can improve that program or that process. And then what do? You test it again. You get more feedback from your end user. And then You make modifications to it based on what you learn, and then you go test it again. And so that is the part that really helps you connect your solution to what the end user really needs. Because through that entire process, you're getting feedback from them. So leaders, take your mark. What I didn't share with you yet is that I went to Clemson on a track and field scholarship. I was a hurdler. I ran the hurdles from 7th grade through 12th grade. My father was my track coach and my chemistry teacher. And we practiced. Day in and day out, we practiced. We learned techniques, we learned skills, because hurdling is not just about speed, it's about technique. And so I practiced long and hard because I wanted to be the best. And the clarion call was my father at these track meets saying, runners, take your mark. And what that meant was everything you've learned, everything you have practiced, now it's time to perform. So now, your clarion call. Leaders, take your mark. What are you going to do to implement design thinking in your workplace? What are you going to walk away with today? Step 1, identify the most compelling, pain-producing problem in your organization related to HR and safety. What's causing the most pain? And if you don't know today, go empathize. Go talk to your employees. Go interview. Go do some focus groups. Go find out by talking to people and really caring about how they're doing. Then once you identify that most compelling, pain-producing problem, the next thing you're going to do is understand which problem could have the fastest positive impact once it's resolved. If it's your performance appraisal system, go test it out. Even if you just start with one department, saying this, and that's what ADP did, to totally flip their performance management system. They're a global company. They haven't implemented it company-wide yet. They started in one unit, in one department. That was their experiment. They tested it. Then they went back to the end users, the managers, and they said, how did you enjoy that process? What parts of it were great for you? What parts did you hate? Then they started changing it again. And then after they reached success in that one unit, they expanded it to the next unit and to the next until it was in an entire division. Their VP of HR is one of my good friends, and she shared with me, this was really scary, but we're doing it, and they're reaching some success with it. And then establish a multidisciplinary design team. If you're the HR leader, the safety leader, I hope you don't create a design team that only has HR people on it. Get someone from marketing, get someone from sales, get someone from manufacturing, get someone from shipping and receiving. Bring all of these ideas together because you want people who think differently than you, who have a different perspective than you, so that you can really create. What are the areas you need to focus on? If you don't know exactly where to start, look at the org design. Is the organization structure really set up to help achieve the results of the strategic objectives? If not, how can you redesign it? Look at engagement. Talk to your employees. Find out what's causing them to be disengaged. Change it. Look at learning and development. Are people really learning? Or are they just sitting in class, staring the blank stare to just be able to sign the note, say, yes, I went through bloodborne pathogens, bye. I used to be the safety trainer, so I know. It was just a check the box approach. Analytics, how are you using data? Are you collecting data? If not, use it to make decisions. HR skills, look across your HR team, look across your safety team. Do you have the right skill set? If not, then you're gonna have to provide some upskilling for your HR leaders and your safety leaders. Digital HR. We're in an age of acceleration, a digital revolution. People wanna be able to look on their smartphones and see job postings and apply now. Are you taking advantage of that? If not, you have to upskill and work very closely with your IT department to make sure that you can do that. Innovate HR now. Innovate safety now. And I just regret that we're out of time because I wanted you to do this today. So if you don't do anything else, please take a picture of this slide because I'm giving you homework. What is one idea you wish you could implement tomorrow? Let me get up here. One idea you could implement tomorrow. Who is your end user helping you with your idea? What is the key benefit for your user? then create your how might we statement based on that. How might we help our managers and supervisors, for example, achieve a culture of feedback in their team? How might we? I would like for each of you to generate your how might we statement and email it to me. If I don't hear from you, I'm gonna find out from Ed. Who didn't do their homework? I told you I'm a teacher. I was raised by teachers. I believe in homework and excellence. So take a picture of this, come up with your how might we statement. Share it with me, please. I'd love to support you through this process. This is vitally important to our workplaces, for HR, for unleashing the potential in our employees and making sure that they're having exceptional employee experiences. And lastly, get over your fear. Be willing to let go of the traditional approaches to HR and to safety. Turn that box over. Stop prejudging your own ideas. Resist the urge to say, oh, I would tell my manager about this, but no, I don't think it'll work. We're all creative. We were born creative. But the challenge is sustaining that creativity into adulthood, by Sir Ken Robinson. I can't take credit for that thought. So use that creativity to innovate HR and innovate safety. And please, 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 just do it. It has been my pleasure to be with you today. I hope you learned something that will help you innovate HR and innovate safety.
We have 30 minutes between classes, so if y'all want to stay and ask questions and everything, I'm sure Dr. Wood would be glad to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.